Odessa Crane had worked the third floor of Harwick and Lorne for 14 years, long enough to know the lobby by its sounds. She knew the particular hush of a Monday morning when the partners drifted in from the weekend, briefcases worn soft at the corners, faces still carrying the distance of 2 days away from the building. She knew the crisp percussion of a client arrival, heels on marble, the soft exhale of the revolving door, the receptionist's bright, practiced greeting. And she knew, by the particular silence that fell over the lobby at 9:30 on a Tuesday morning, that something had gone wrong before she rounded the corridor and saw it for herself. The woman standing at the reception desk was unremarkable in the way that genuinely composed people so often are. 60, perhaps a little past it, in a coat the color of winter fog. She carried a single leather folio, dark and well-made, the kind of thing that doesn't announce itself. Her hair was set with care. She stood the way people stand when they are accustomed to being received, not stiffly, not with entitlement, but with a calm, settled patience, as though the world had a tendency to sort itself out if you simply waited. Odessa did not catch the beginning of the exchange. By the time she came into view, the lead receptionist, Blythe, who had been at the front desk for 3 years and ran it with the confidence of someone who had been there for 30, was already leaning forward over the marble counter in the particular way she had when a situation had been decided. "I've checked twice," Blythe said, her voice carrying clearly across the lobby. "There is no reservation under that name for the Meridian Suite this morning. There is nothing in the system. I'm not sure where your information came from, but it didn't come from us." The woman did not raise her voice. "The reservation was made through Mr. Calloway's office. It has been standing for 3 weeks. Blythe straightened. "Ma'am, I understand, but the system is what it is. If there's been a misunderstanding on your end, I'd suggest calling back through whatever channel you used and confirming from there." She glanced sideways, a small gesture toward the security desk. "I'm going to need to ask you to step back from the counter." Across the lobby, a cluster of clients waiting for the 9:40 intake had gone still. A young associate near the elevator had stopped pretending to look at his phone. Odessa stood in the corridor mouth and felt the particular discomfort of watching something unfold that she did not yet understand, with no clear authority to intervene. The woman stepped back from the counter without being told twice. She did not argue. She did not raise her hands or her voice or her chin in defiance. She simply moved to the long bench along the lobby's east wall, the one with the low arrangement of white flowers on the table beside it, sat down, set the folio on her knees, and opened it. Blythe exchanged a look with her supervisor, Renata, who had materialized from the back office in the way supervisors do when they sense a situation has been concluded and only needs to be confirmed. Renata gave a small, satisfied nod. In front of the lobby's arriving Tuesday morning, the thing had been handled. From the bench, the woman made a phone call. She did not cup her hand over the phone. She did not whisper. She spoke in the same even tone she had used at the counter, and what she said was brief enough that Odessa, still standing at the corridor's edge, only caught the shape of it, a name, a room number, a single declarative sentence. Then she closed the call, set the phone on top of the folio, folded her hands, and waited. Odessa looked at the clock above the elevator bank. It read 9:33. At 9:41, the door to the managing partner's office opened. Richard Voss had been managing partner of Harwick and Lorne for 11 years. Odessa had worked under him for 9 of them. She had seen him walk through the lobby hundreds of times, measured, deliberate, the same pace regardless of what was waiting. She had never, in 9 years, seen him move the way he moved now. Not running. Not visibly alarmed. But with a compression in his step that meant every unnecessary thing had been cut away, and what remained was the walk of a man who understood that time was no longer on his side. He crossed the lobby in 12 seconds. He reached the bench, and he stopped, and he said, "Mrs. Calloway. I am deeply sorry. Please come with me." The woman, Mrs. Calloway, stood without hurry. She picked up the folio and the phone, and she looked at Richard Voss with an expression that was not triumph and was not anger. It was the expression of someone who has been made to wait for something that was already theirs. "Thank you, Richard," she said, and walked with him toward the corridor that led to the partner's suite. The lobby held its silence for a moment after they had gone. Odessa understood then what she had been watching. The weight of it settled over her not with drama but with the slow, certain gravity of something she would not soon put down. She had spent 14 years reading this lobby. She had read it wrong this morning, and so had everyone else. Blythe was still at the counter. She had turned slightly from the desk, and the color had left her face in the specific, even way that understanding arrives when it is unwelcome. Renata stood beside her, very still. Odessa went back to the third floor and sat at her desk and did not accomplish much for the next 20 minutes. Margaret Calloway, she learned, not from gossip, which moved fast at Harwick and Lorne, but from the firm's founding documents, which she pulled up on her own because she needed to be certain, was the wife of Gerard Calloway, who had founded the firm in 1988 and who remained its largest equity holder, its named senior partner, and the single reason that 4 of the firm's 7 anchor clients had followed the practice from its original Midtown office to this building 17 years ago. Gerard Calloway had been in declining health for 2 years. He did not come to the office. But his name was on the wall beside the entrance in brushed steel letters, and his signature was on every partnership agreement the firm had ever executed, and his wife had been using the Meridian Suite for her own charitable foundation's board sessions for the past 4 years because he had arranged it that way, and the standing reservation was documented in a separate booking system that the front desk had been advised of annually. Blythe had not checked the secondary system. Renata had not checked it either. At 11:15, Odessa received a call from the partner's floor asking her to carry a document to the Meridian Suite. She was not told what it was. She took the elevator up and knocked, and a young associate from the managing partner's office opened the door and handed her a sealed envelope on firm letterhead, and she carried it in and set it on the table. Mrs. Calloway was seated at the head of the suite's conference table. The foundation's board session had begun without difficulty once the room had been properly prepared. She was composed and engaged and gave no outward sign that the morning had cost her anything. She thanked Odessa by name, which Odessa did not expect, and Odessa nodded and left quickly because she did not trust herself to say anything adequate. The envelope was a written apology. Odessa knew this because Richard Voss had told the third floor's senior staff directly, in a meeting that lasted 8 minutes, that 2 members of the reception team had been terminated for cause effective that morning, that a full review of front desk access protocols had been opened with outside compliance counsel, and that a formal written apology on firm letterhead had been prepared and delivered to Mrs. Calloway before the noon hour. He said these things in the flat, administrative cadence of a man reading from a checklist, and he did not editorialize, and when he was finished he said that the matter was being handled through proper channels and that no further discussion of it was appropriate. Odessa did not discuss it. But she thought about it for the rest of that day, and for several days after. She thought about the moment at the counter, Blythe leaning forward, voice carrying, certain of herself in the particular way that people are certain when they have decided a thing before they have checked it. She thought about the quiet of the woman at the bench, the phone call that lasted less than 90 seconds, the folio on her knees. She thought about the 12 seconds it had taken Richard Voss to cross the lobby once he understood what had happened, and the color that had left Blythe's face when she understood it too. She had been at the firm for 14 years. She knew, or believed she knew, how a lobby worked, who belonged where, which arrivals warranted the warmest greeting, which ones the most careful attention. She had been wrong this morning, not because she had failed to recognize Mrs. Calloway, but because she had watched the scene and drawn the same conclusion as Blythe and Renata, and she had been as certain as they were. The woman had not argued. She had not demanded to speak to someone. She had not raised her voice or produced her credentials or insisted that a mistake had been made. She had simply sat down on the bench with her folio and made one phone call and waited, with the patience of someone who understood that the truth did not need her help to arrive. On the 4th day, Odessa passed the Meridian Suite in the late afternoon and saw through the glass that it was empty and cleaned and reset. The white flowers on the lobby bench had been replaced with fresh ones. The name on the wall by the entrance still read Calloway in brushed steel, as it always had. She had walked past that name 1,400 times without stopping to consider what it meant. She stopped now. She read it. She kept walking. Some things you only understand when you have stood in the lobby long enough to see who it is that the building was built around, and had the decency, once you understood, not to forget it.